In the next video clip, we're going to be taking a look at site columns in SharePoint. So I'll remind you again of my little hierarchy of reusable content. In the previous one, I covered lookups, and now I'd like to talk about site columns. So lookups are great if you want to share a reusable list or a drop-down on existing site. It does not work on subsites below that. So if you have a site with subsites, then site columns is the better way to go. Have to admit, don't use that much of site columns. I'd rather just use the term store, which we're going to cover in the next video series. So how do I get to site columns? If I go to settings and I go to site information, of course I can access the site settings from here. So view all site settings. And then here on the left-hand side, you'll see site columns. Site column is a column that you create that's accessible on the current site as well as any of the sub-sites below it. So that makes sense if you have a human resources site and below it you have a couple of sub-sites for recruitment and payroll, etc., and you want them to use the same columns. So here you can see that there's already quite a lot of columns there because SharePoint uses site columns for the different forms that you fill in the different apps. When I create a site column, very important, I'm going to give this a name and I'm going to call it process. Remember the lookup list that I built in the previous video. So I am not going to build the choice here. I definitely am not going to build the choice list here, even though a lot of people build site columns like that. If you build it as a choice here, it means someone needs site admin rights to be able to update this list. I'm going to build it as a lookup. It's a bit of a strange way of doing this. I'm going to build it as a lookup because remember, I built a little process list on this site. So I'm going to build it as a lookup. I'm going to then look at any existing, let me just first add it to a group, sorry. So I always create my own groups. I just want to see first if I haven't already. No, so I'm going to create my own group, TGS site columns. So all my own site columns I'll always add to that group. And then I can get my information from process. Remember, I've already built it. Once it refreshes, I'm going to say it must look at the title column. Same story as creating a lookup, but now my site column is looking at that lookup list. And that's how easy it is. So firstly, I will, at the top level site, I will create a little custom list. And then I'll create a site column that looks at that custom list as a lookup, which means if I go back to the site now, instead of adding lookups on my apps, I can then add a site column firstly. So let's go to any of the lists. Let me show you. I'm just going to go to my incident management list as an example. So on this incident management list, I'm going to go to the list settings. And on the list settings, instead of adding a lookup column or a choice column, I'm going to add a site column. So there we go, site column. And then I can choose from the site columns. And this is why I created my own group. There you can see TGS site columns. There's the site column I want to add, process, and we're going to add it. Looks exactly the same as your lookup list, but there's a big difference. Because I've pointed the site column at the lookup list now, the site column I can see on subsites as well. So if I go to site contents and create a subsite, which I'm going to very quickly do, now you'll see at the moment I'm on a subsite below that intranet that I had for farms and cool stuff or whatever. So this is a subsite below that site. I'm going to prove my point now. I'm going to go to one of the apps. Remember, a lookup cannot go across sites. I'm going to go to one of my apps. I'm just going to go to the document library. I want to show you that I can still see that form, that lookup list, remember? So if I go to library settings and I go create column first, let me prove my point, and I go lookup. Let me show you what I can see on that lookup list. Absolutely jack nothing. Do you see that? Lookups can only see the stuff on the current site. So site columns can go below subsites. So if I now go add from existing site columns, that means I can change this to my TGS site columns, and there's process. So that means I can have one little custom list on a top level site, point a site column to it, and then use that site column across lots of subsites, which I don't want you to create that much anymore between me and you, but you can. So site columns definitely much better to use because it gets updated and maintained in one place. Good call for you to use is site columns to go one level up. We'll chat soon.